Oh, I was there, hated the day. The day was a miserable day. I mean, it was a worst royal engagement I ever did, a royal wedding I ever did.
Arthur Edwards has seen it all. He photographed Charles and Diana's wedding, William and Kate's ceremony, and every major royal event for nearly 5 decades. When he calls something the worst, you know it's bad. But what he revealed about Harry and Meghan's wedding day goes beyond bad. It's absolutely devastating. Edwards didn't just dislike the event. He described it as the most miserable day of his entire career. A man who's witnessed history in the making, who's captured moments that defined the monarchy, called this wedding a complete disaster.
And I travelled the world with him, and I did really enjoy working with him. But you know, now I really don't care if I ever see him again, because the way he's behaved towards the king and our queen and his brother and his sister-in-law is appalling.
The veteran photographer couldn't even get a single usable photo.
He was angry, and I felt we were punished for that. In fact, I never got one picture in the paper published from that day.
Think about that for a second. This is a professional who's made his career capturing perfect royal moments, and he walked away with nothing. Edwards admitted he couldn't wait to get out of Windsor Castle, desperate to escape what should have been a celebration.
She delivered it like an actress delivered it, and Oprah responded going, wow. You know, and then Oprah Winfrey had met them once. She was a guest. The Clooneys, the guests. I mean, never met them before, but they were the guests. And, you know, I thought to myself, this all showbiz rubbish.
While millions watched on television, thinking they were witnessing romance, those actually there were living through something entirely different. But the real shock came when Edwards revealed just how deliberately they were sabotaged. This wasn't incompetence or bad planning. This was warfare disguised as a wedding. The seating arrangements alone should have been a massive red flag. Senior royals who dedicated their entire lives to serving the crown were shoved into the back rows like unwanted relatives at a cheap wedding.
The photographers they engaged for the job was 5 feet away, you know, it was just hopeless. And then the carriage shot, when they went past me in the carriage, they looked the other way. So for me, it was a disaster.
Meanwhile, Hollywood celebrities who barely knew the couple strutted into prime front row seats like they owned the place. Oprah Winfrey, who'd met Harry and Meghan exactly once before the wedding, got VIP treatment. George and Amal Clooney, complete strangers to the couple, were treated like royalty, while actual royals were treated like extras.
All my life, you know, and then Oprah Winfrey had met them once. She was a guest. The Clooneys, the guests. I mean, never met them before, but they were the guests. And, you know, I thought to myself, this all showbiz rubbish. So he was angry, and I felt we were punished for that. In fact, I never got one picture in the paper published from that day. Oh, I was there, hated the day. The day was a miserable day. I mean, it was a worst royal engagement I ever did, a royal wedding I ever did.
Edwards watched in disbelief as people who'd never contributed a single day of service to the monarchy got the red carpet treatment, while family members who'd spent decades upholding royal duty were humiliated. It wasn't about honoring tradition or celebrating family bonds. It was about which famous faces would look best when the cameras started rolling. The message was crystal clear. Celebrity status mattered more than royal blood or lifelong service.
Really lovely royal weddings. I did both King Charles's weddings. I did William's wedding. I did Andrew's wedding. I did Sophie and Edward. You know, I mean, they were lovely occasions. But that today, I couldn't get out of Windsor quick enough. I promise you that.
The worst royal wedding to cover.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when William was born and Harry was born and George and Charlotte and Louis, we got great pictures outside the hospital. I remember, and William and Catherine especially, they made such an effort to show the whole world their new baby. I have to say, though, you know, that first year of Meghan, working with her on the road, you know, we went all over the country. She was incredible. I mean, I thought she was a great asset to the family. I knew they'd be seething. I knew the Queen would be seething. I knew that the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles would be seething. It would be so unfair. And then when the baby was born, when Archie was born, that was another, in my view, a disaster, because I knew we was not going to get a picture of it. Everybody was hoping we would get pictures of it. That's really so awful, because they're not getting to meet their cousins and to know their cousins. Such a shame for them.
The distinguished guests whispered their shock throughout the ceremony. These weren't just random attendees feeling snubbed. These were people who understood royal protocol, who knew how these events traditionally worked. They'd attended other royal weddings where respect and hierarchy actually meant something. But this felt different. This felt like a Hollywood award show that accidentally happened in a royal chapel. What made it even more insulting was the blatant nature of it all. There was no attempt to blend tradition with modernity or find a respectful middle ground. It was a complete rejection of everything the royal family represented, executed in front of the world's cameras, with the family's own money paying for it. While viewers at home saw elegant guests in designer outfits enjoying a perfect spring day, the reality inside St. George's Chapel was pure torture. The brutal heat turned what should have been a comfortable ceremony into a sweating, miserable endurance test. Guests packed into the chapel wearing heavy formal wear, desperately trying to maintain their composure while makeup ran and tempers flared behind forced smiles. Women clutched programs like fans, desperately trying to cool themselves while maintaining royal etiquette. Men tugged at their collars, feeling trapped in suits that became suffocating prisons under the relentless heat. Edwards described the atmosphere as oppressive, not romantic. People weren't thinking about the beautiful ceremony or the happy couple. They were just trying to survive until they could escape to fresh air. This wasn't just uncomfortable weather that nobody could control. Royal events have dealt with rain, wind, and heat before without turning into disasters. What made this different was the complete lack of care for the guests' comfort. It felt like the organizers were so focused on how everything would look on camera that they forgot actual human beings would have to endure the experience. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. While the couple looked picture perfect for the global audience, everyone else suffered in silence. It perfectly captured what would become the Sussex brand, looking great for the cameras, while the people around them paid the price. If the seating disaster wasn't bad enough, Prince Harry decided to turn his own wedding into a battlefield against the British press. Instead of embracing his royal duty to work with the media, Harry actively sabotaged every photo opportunity. He deliberately avoided looking at cameras, positioned himself to block shots, and made it impossible for photographers to do their jobs. Edwards, a man who'd worked respectfully with every other royal for decades, found himself treated like an enemy at what should have been a celebration. This wasn't just unprofessional behavior, it was a calculated attack. Harry was using his wedding day to punish journalists he blamed for negative coverage of Meghan. But instead of rising above the criticism like every royal before him, he chose petty revenge. Edwards needed an 800mm lens just to get basic arrival shots, pushed so far back that he joked about needing GPS to find his position. The most shocking part was how personal Harry made it. When the royal carriage passed by, offering the perfect traditional photo opportunity, Harry and Meghan deliberately looked the other way. It was a middle finger disguised as a wave, a deliberate snub that left photographers scrambling for any usable image. Edwards, who'd captured iconic moments of William and Kate, Charles and Diana, walked away empty-handed for the first time in his career. This wasn't about privacy or security. Other royal weddings had managed to balance media access with personal moments. This was about control, spite, and sending a message that the rules didn't apply to them. It was the first real sign that Harry and Meghan saw themselves as above the institution that was paying for their fairy tale. After enduring hours of heat and discomfort, guests expected the reception to redeem the miserable ceremony experience. Instead, they got what can only be described as the most embarrassing royal banquet in history. Forget the lavish spreads that had defined royal celebrations for centuries. Forget the abundance and grandeur that guests had come to expect from monarchy events. Harry and Meghan served finger food and tiny canopies that wouldn't satisfy a child's birthday party. People dressed in $1,000 outfits found themselves nibbling on microscopic portions while their stomachs growled with hunger. Edwards called the food offerings pathetic, and he was being generous. Guests whispered their disbelief, shocked that what was supposed to be the wedding of the decade couldn't even provide a proper meal. Some attendees quietly admitted they stopped at fast food restaurants on their way home, desperate to actually eat something substantial. The contrast with previous royal weddings was staggering. Charles and Diana, William and Kate, even smaller royal celebrations had featured proper banquets worthy of the occasion. But Harry and Meghan chose Instagram-worthy minimalism over actually feeding their guests. It was all presentation with zero substance, much like everything else about their approach to royal life. The symbolism was perfect. While they preached about compassion and caring for others, they couldn't even be bothered to properly feed the people who'd traveled from around the world to celebrate with them. It was selfishness disguised as modern sophistication, and everyone in attendance felt it. The most damning revelation came years later, when Grant Harold, King Charles's former butler, revealed what really happened as the royal family left St. George's Chapel. In his upcoming book, The Royal Butler, Harold exposed Prince Philip's private reaction to the entire spectacle. As they processed out of the chapel with cameras capturing what looked like a happy royal family, Philip turned to Queen Elizabeth and delivered 4 words that said everything. That's over. This wasn't just an elderly man tired from a long ceremony. This was Prince Philip, a man who'd attended countless royal events, expressing pure relief that the ordeal had finally ended. The Duke of Edinburgh, known for his blunt honesty and dedication to royal duty, couldn't hide his disgust with what he'd just witnessed. His profane comment captured what many in the royal family were thinking but couldn't say publicly. The timing of this revelation makes it even more significant. As Harry and Meghan continue their media campaign against the royal family, claiming they were never welcomed or supported, Philip's reaction shows the truth. The family wasn't hostile to them because of racism or jealousy. They were appalled by the complete disrespect for tradition, protocol, and basic courtesy that defined that wedding day. Philip's comment wasn't about the marriage itself. It was about witnessing centuries of royal tradition being trampled by 2 people who seemed to care more about headlines than heritage. The man who'd supported the Queen for over 70 years couldn't wait for this mockery of royal values to end. The wedding wasn't just a disaster in itself, it was a preview of everything that would follow. Within months, Harry and Meghan had isolated themselves from the royal family, rejecting invitations and creating distance where there should have been unity. The grandparents who'd welcomed Meghan into the family found themselves cut off from their own grandchildren, watching Archie and Lilibet grow up as strangers. Edwards called it heartbreaking, watching an entire generation of royal children miss out on relationships with their cousins and grandparents. While Harry and Meghan preached about the importance of family and compassion in their media appearances, they were simultaneously destroying the actual family bonds that mattered most. The children became pawns in their parents' war against the monarchy. The isolation wasn't accidental or organic. It was deliberate and strategic. Every rejected invitation, every declined family gathering, every choice to stay in hotels instead of royal residences sent a clear message. They weren't trying to find their place within the family structure, they were actively rejecting it, while simultaneously benefiting from the titles and status it provided. The hypocrisy was staggering. The same couple who would later complain about being cut off from the family had spent months cutting themselves off first. They built walls and then claimed they were being excluded, creating the perfect victim narrative for their later media campaigns. When their star power began to fade and public sympathy started shifting, Harry and Meghan launched their nuclear option, the Oprah interview. But this wasn't a conversation or an attempt at reconciliation. It was a carefully orchestrated attack designed to inflict maximum damage on the royal family, while positioning themselves as innocent victims of a racist, cruel system. The timing revealed everything about their true motivations. When relevance was slipping and Netflix deals needed justifying, they suddenly had explosive stories to tell. Edwards saw it for exactly what it was: a staged performance, not a genuine attempt at truth-telling. The couple sat in Oprah's backyard, lobbing accusations at family members who couldn't defend themselves, creating a one-sided narrative that dominated headlines for weeks. The interview wasn't about healing or moving forward, it was about profit, publicity, and keeping their brand relevant. They manufactured a scandal big enough to guarantee global coverage, turning family dysfunction into primetime entertainment. The chaos they created didn't matter, as long as it kept them in the spotlight and the money flowing. The real victims weren't Harry and Meghan. They were the elderly grandparents watching their family torn apart on international television. The children who would grow up knowing their parents had publicly destroyed family relationships, any institution that had welcomed them with open arms, only to be repaid with betrayal.